And the next session that we're going to present to you is the session on future-proofing clean growth. And ladies and gentlemen, we would like to urge you once again to use Slido and put in all the different questions that you will have for the panel that will shortly be introduced to you. Stephen Wyatt, Research and Innovation Director at the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. Stephen, it is a great pleasure to welcome you here on stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Back in 2013, when we set up the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult, we had a pretty simple mission, and that was to reduce the costs of energy generated by offshore wind and try and put that on a pathway to being subsidy-free. We were to do that by deploying smart, new, innovative technology. And to some extent, we've had tremendous success. The costs of offshore wind have reduced by about 50% in the last 5 years or so. But to many, that hasn't been the real success story. By deploying innovative new technologies, we've developed a whole suite of products and services. We've created economic growth, and we've created jobs, often in regions of the UK that need it the most. And so, if you like, offshore wind is perhaps an example where, yes, we've managed to improve the economics of deploying a low-carbon energy generation technology, but also there have been additional benefits of creating new products and services. Transitioning from large monolithic power stations generated by fossil fuels to a more agile energy system dominated by renewables is just one of the transitions we have to make as we move to a sustainable low-carbon economy. And this afternoon, we're going to debate what does that actually mean, that transition, but also where are the real opportunities and how do we enable it to happen perhaps faster than we otherwise would. So I'd very much like to welcome on stage our panel to debate this with us this afternoon.
So I'm Jan Segerstam. I'm the development director of a company called Empower IM, working out of Finland. We work with over 100 utilities and energy generators in enabling the new energy economy and the distributed energy system of tomorrow. So we're working right in the middle of the transition, and we're working together in EUREKA clusters, in H2020 projects, and obviously directly with our customers in providing energy management systems, in providing services to actually enable the new kind of energy economy to work. We find the greatest opportunity in actually enabling our new kind of economy, the sustainable economy, is in joining the different domain knowledges and joining the new emerging technologies that come from the different domains so that we can have sustainable ecosystems, not just silos of certain technologies. So that is really at the core of enabling the new energy system that we need. One of the greatest challenges is that we are a very diverse globe. We have different systems, different kinds of policies, different histories, different infrastructures, and that means that one solution does not fit all. And that means that our systems, our possibilities, our different kinds of projects, our products, our collaboration, it all needs to be flexible. And that means even more collaboration. So even though it is the greatest opportunity, it is also at the same time the greatest challenge that we must face, and that's why we're all here today with 2,000 different people from different places actually discussing these issues together.
Yeah, and thank you. And Xavier.
Hi, good afternoon. So I'm Xavier Mamo. I'm the Director of Research and Development for EDF Energy in the UK. So EDF Energy and EDF Group as a whole is a leading company in the low-carbon world, both on the generation side, but also supplying low-carbon energy and electricity to our customer and new services. So I think there is quite a bit of a challenge ahead of us, as you mentioned, and what we believe is that electricity is really part of the solution and will be the energy of the future. So I think what we are clearly looking at is really how to push forward the agenda of low-carbon generation in order to decarbonize and continue to decarbonize the energy system. So in the UK, we've seen quite a strong decrease in emission from the power sector. So we need to probably try to find a way to accelerate that with more more renewable generation, offshore wind, but potentially also nuclear as a complement to that mix. On the other hand, we also need to make sure that new uses of electricity can develop and enable to leverage that low carbon mix that is being developed in order to achieve such a decrease in CO2 emission overall. I think one of the sort of main challenges is obviously this is a transition and everything will have to change, starting probably with us, where we will have to change the way we are addressing and tackling some of the issues, be probably a bit more agile and be able to test and trial out new solutions, but also to be really focused on our customer needs and to be able to anticipate and understand the change for them and to help them make that change as smoothly as possible in order to realize the impact and the benefits of this transition.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Hi, everybody. So my name is Ruth Kerrigan, and I'm the Director for IES for Research. IES are an SME based in Glasgow in Scotland, and our core software for 25 years has been dynamic simulation modelling. And that's basically physics-based modelling for buildings, for energy, for design. So a lot of the large engineering companies, Arup, AECOM, Ramble, would use our software to design Part L compliance, design for BREEAM and for LEED and for energy efficiency. But over the past 10 years through R&D projects, we've moved beyond that to be able to integrate real data, look at machine learning and AI, to be able to provide energy management solutions also for our clients, and also look beyond just the single building and look at groups of buildings and cities so that we can look at an integrated planning, look at urban planning from the city's perspective and how we can look at solutions for more than just the single building. And that brings in then also our resources, so our networks. So we have tools for power flow modelling for the electricity network, and also for heat, for waste heat and cool, and we'll be adding water this year. So our approach is very much not to treat things in silos, but to look at things from that integrated planning perspective. And some of the challenges that I see out there are very much practical. They're people. You know, in general, we don't care about energy. You go to a building manager and you say, I can identify 10 to 20% savings for you very quickly. He says, well, energy is only 1% of my bill and my salary costs are 95%. So we need to flip it around and we need to go to building owners and say, okay, I'm going to help make your building healthier and more comfortable. I'm going to increase productivity for your staff. They'll be out sick less, and then straight away they go fantastic. And we're tagging on energy as part of that solution. And just to pick up on something that Xavier said as well, like with respect to, I do believe that electrification is the way to go, but from a practical perspective, we went to a university in Glasgow recently and we're trying to help them make that transition towards a decarbonised economy. But they've invested very heavily in the last 10, 15 years in their district heating network, and they don't want to remove that investment. So we need to find solutions that work with businesses, work with campuses, work with the people that are operating it and have to pay the bill and have to do it at the end of the day.
Hey, so my name is Tom Gray. I am also a director at Fahrenheit 212. So we are an innovation consultancy. We're pan-European, and we have offices over in the States. And yeah, we would say that we help clients tackle growth challenges and unlock them through innovation. But I guess actually picking up on what you were saying, Jan, really for us, it's about helping businesses navigate change. And helping them navigate the changes in their external environment, because what we know is that it's never been a more difficult time for a business to survive, especially a big business, right? So if you look at 60 years ago, the average lifespan of a business on the S&P 500 was 67 years. Today it's 15. And it's indicative of how the pace of change is starting to outpace businesses' abilities to respond to it. And I think if you think about clean energy and sustainability, that's obviously one of the biggest areas of change. And it carries huge challenges to these businesses. But I think for us, we're particularly interested in how businesses can look at those drivers of change and actually find the opportunities inside it. So of course, you've got policy changes and policies around, for example, electric vehicles or packaging or carbonization. But then also changes in technology. And we're particularly interested in how changes in technology can create real sort of trickle-down or ripple effects across the economy, not simply for businesses who have to perhaps clean up their core business or who are working within that core sector, for example, energy, but actually how electric vehicles might create huge new opportunities across the entire economy. And looking at how do big and small businesses find the products and services and the business models inside that that enable them to grow and enable them to create this win-win impact in creating a low-carbon economy.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, panel. Welcome. We've got a great mix of skills here. We've got innovation expertise on one side, data-driven expertise, utility-led and systems modeling here. So I think we have many of the solutions we need. Tom, I wanted to probe a little bit more what you were beginning to say there. So the session's called Clean Growth. You were beginning to sort of identify some of the opportunities for businesses in that sea of clean growth. Yet I'm constantly hearing the need for a warlike effort to tackle sustainability and climate change. We need to move faster. We need to be doing more. Up until now, of course, there have been business success stories from clean growth, but how can we adapt at the necessary pace that we need to globally and maintain growth? Is it possible to do that?
Yeah.
So can we speed up the pace of transition and still have growth opportunities, or will it have a negative effect?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I imagine that probably most people sitting in the audience as well are thinking, clean and growth, can they go together? And I think certainly for me, working in innovation, I think the measure of growth and actually what we should be measuring growth against is something that we have to think about. But certainly, I mean, from what I see, big clients and other big businesses who are out there are recognizing that it's for their own sustainability as a business to still survive, they will need to change anyway, and really, the sweet spot is when that change can create a change in the world. So let's get to examples. I guess one business that's really interesting is IKEA. I think it was 2 years ago that the chief sustainability officer came out, Steve Howard, I think, came out and said that he thought that we'd reached peak stuff. And this is a business that's they've sort of built their business on storage solutions and like selling as much stuff as possible. But they as a business recognizing that this is not a sustainable way for them to do business, and turning that around, and whether it's looking at how they are in-housing their energy generation to go clean energy, or in-housing their supply chain and their value chain to grow their own forest. And ultimately, moving from selling things to getting into circular economy or subscription services, buying TaskRabbit that starts to sell services. And you can see how, for them as a business, they are still being sustainable in terms of being able to deliver returns. But ultimately, they are, as a big business, making a big move. That's a huge signal to the market around perhaps a shift away from retail and into services, which to me is an interesting example of clean growth.
Yeah. So that is an interesting example. And of course, they have very tangible products to sell. Xavier, I'm wondering about your product, which of course is electricity, and one electron looks very much the same as the next. You're a big business. How are you adapting? What is your portfolio looking like as EDF just now, and how are you going to embrace the transition and perhaps play your part in moving it faster?
Well, I think, first, with the transition, there will be investment, and that's clearly outlay, and that will, if, of course, we can organize that in a very reasonable way, I think that's a good source for growth creation no matter what. So I think that's probably one angle. After that, yes, I think what we are looking at when it comes to a commodity, which is electricity, but that is really necessary for each and every one, is really to understand more the uses, how is the electricity being used, and how to build on that. So I think one very, very good example that we are seeing at the minute is the electric mobility and electric vehicles, which represent a completely new use and potentially disrupting from a generation perspective, but also from a network perspective. So we need to clearly understand how that is being used and how the transition can happen. So I think in terms of examples of what we are doing, we are actually running some demonstration projects with communities and probably focusing a bit more on fleet vehicles to start with, in order to really understand for businesses who are basically delivering stuff to their customer, what does it mean to move from traditional vehicle to electric vehicle? What are the patterns? Will that disturb their processes? And can they make some value out of it? And one good example for that is using those vehicles to provide back some energy to the grid when they are not in use, and to understand actually, is it a positive outcome for your business, and how can you leverage that? So I think it's really looking at new uses and potentially developing new some other opportunities as well. I think the other one I can think of building up on a project is peer-to-peer energy trading, for instance, and that could be a good sort of opportunity to make a better use of local renewable energy, mostly produced on the top of buildings, and how to engage actually customer with electricity, but something that is very local, that they can discuss and exchange on with their neighbor, with their friends, and how they can see that through a different lens. And by creating that awareness, basically, I think that there is an opportunity to sort of accelerate that transition.
Okay, so I can see how a large utility can embrace this transition and seek out the pockets of business opportunities, and you've given some great examples there. But I think you began to touch on, can this transition actually benefit the small business who are going about their day-to-day concern, perhaps not directly involved with environmental or climate change type opportunities, but do you think this transition, whether it's buying an electric vehicle that can also act as storage or something, can that create further opportunities for a typical business, a bakery or a manufacturer of PCB boards or something like that?
I think definitely. I think I think the focus should be less on the electricity itself, but more on the customer and what business needs, and how basically by bringing either new technology or new business case, basically, that can be an opportunity for them to do potentially things differently, or to leverage those new services or products that's out there. So I think it's really taking an approach that is far more customer-centric in order to really understand what the needs are, what the potentialities are in order to leverage basically their business processes, how they do things and why, and then to understand what new technologies or new market opportunities can bring and help them actually accelerate.
Yep. And Ruth, we were chatting before we came on stage, and you were talking about sort of systems level modeling and how you're able to help communities or towns, cities, counties figure out what their energy system might be. And I wonder, are you kind of the bridge between sort of the individual customers that Xavier would have and then that sort of community level system, and what that means for the transition?
Yeah, so I think like everything that Xavier's talked about is spot on. Like that's where we need to be moving towards buildings working with each other and with the local energy system to benefit. And I think like if we look at the state of play at the moment, we need to renovate our buildings. Only 1% to 2% renovation rate still across the EU, and it's not happening. Why? Because it's too expensive. So we need to start looking at that full solution and how you can make it more beneficial and attractive. So if you're renovating your building, making it more energy efficient, also introducing local production, perhaps some PV or a community system amongst a couple of buildings, and you're enabling those buildings to work with the energy system, perhaps through a feed-in tariff or peer-to-peer trading between their buildings, then you're creating a more attractive financial offering than just going and say, you know, putting insulation in your buildings. But in order to look at that from the community level, we have to then look also at the flexibility and, you know, is there something to trade in the first place? So if you have a residential housing estate, and you put PV on all of the houses, but everybody is out working all day, there's nothing to trade. So we have to look at the demand profile of the buildings. We need to understand when is energy being used, what is there to trade, when is there to trade, and then what systems and assets do we need to add to that? So is it renewable production, is it batteries, is it storage, is it stabilizers? What technologies also need to be integrated, and how do we optimize that and make that all work as one? And better planning, really, it comes back down to.
So it sounds like you're creating a huge amount of data. And I'm wondering, Jan, maybe you've got some thoughts around where the value in that data might be.
Yes, it's hugely important work because by doing that modeling, by doing that planning, we're actually being able to grasp what we can then bring onto the market. And that should be thought of as a broad context. So you were mentioning the example of the campus where they've just recently made investments into district heating. Well, how wonderful, because actually that means that they have new infrastructure which can be leveraged. And rather than thinking, oh, well, let's just run that with oil for the next 25 years, why should we do that? What did the Danes do when they installed wind power? They took their CHP plants and put electrical resistance heaters in entire power plants. Somebody from the 70s would roll over in their grave. Why would you do that? But when you look at the context, you start to see the value in it because it becomes a huge energy storage facility rather than being the kind of high carbon entity that it was before. So the data created allows us to understand where the value is, and then combining the different modes of energy and the different kinds of business processes being run, and the uses of the facilities, the assets, and the opportunities coming from the grid, coming from the energy suppliers, the aggregators, the market operators. Those together create the opportunities that actually then can leverage the value and actually accelerate the change, because the acceleration comes from the stacking of the values. If we do not have a stacking of the values, we will have a very, very slow process going forward. We just saw in the video, we have to go 5 times faster. If we do not aggregate, if we do not put these values together, we're never going to get there.
Yeah, very good. And I'm going to try and pick off a question on Slido, just while we're on this topic. Now, we know that humans are fundamentally lazy and really bad at doing things like building management, and we forget to do stuff, right? So get rid of the human. There's a question here about artificial intelligence. Now, presumably in the building world or in the sort of data-driven world, there's a load of opportunity for artificial intelligence-led businesses. Does anyone have any examples of that?
Sure. There's huge opportunities there. There's artificial intelligence being used in, for instance, managing the energy positions, learning about what the response is in the asset base, and that way deploying it in an efficient fashion. There's also artificial intelligence in being used in network resource control, meaning that we have a more dynamic way of managing network, requiring less investment into the network itself. And I'm guessing that there's something in the building world as well going on with AI, and maybe handing over to you.
Loads, obviously, but
Yes.
I think that one of the interesting things about AI is AI needs data.
Yes.
And data and privacy and security, especially in the building world, is a massive problem. Now, it's a problem that is becoming better, and there's a new My Energy Data initiative coming down from the EU this year, which means that, you know, if you're the building owner, it is your data, and, you know, the BMS provider or somebody else can't claim it as their data. So I think that's going to make big changes as well. But I think where IES come into this is, yes, we use AI, but we use it as a hybrid approach with the physics-based modeling also. So where data isn't available, we use physics-based modeling, and then as data becomes available, we move towards AI, and that can be used for prediction, for optimization, and also for fault detection diagnosis, and as you say, automating systems, because people definitely are, two instances actually here, sorry. People are lazy, but they also want control. So if you take an individual homeowner, they want their house to be smart, they want it to be efficient, they want it to operate it perfectly. But they also want to turn on their washing machine when they want to turn on their washing machine. So it has to be kind of these hybrid approaches to understand why people do things and how they do it, bring in AI, but yes, give them that, inform them, if you turn on your washing machine right now, okay, you can do that, but it might cost you more money, or you may not be greener. And Alexa, Google Echo, we need to be linking with all of these systems as well.
It means that basically we need to hook up to the people who understand people, and that's not always engineers and not really financial people either. But so it's also about the collaboration on the human level to then allow the AI to work. And another implementation of AI is also on the market level, because the markets themselves need to work, and for that reason we need to have forecasting of the different levels of both generation and load. And that leads to a more efficient use of the networks themselves. So not only the technical level there, but also the market level allows for a good use of AI, while we still think a bit on the human level and allow the human interaction to be thought of by humans, not AI.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Tom, I want to ask you
Go ahead.
quickly. Then, okay, my question was going to be,
Go ahead.
still doesn't feel like we're doing enough to help small businesses seize the opportunity here.
Right.
So I'm wondering, so for example, Innovate UK, what would be your advice to Innovate UK to really seize this opportunity and see loads of small businesses flourishing in this space?
Okay, cool. And I guess I can connect to the point I wanted to make about AI, which is ultimately technology doesn't make money, technology doesn't create growth, right? Business models do. And it's really what you do with the technology that it's how you can apply that into a business model. And AI is just such a great example, and mobile or 4 or 5G is another one of technology which has enabled loads of new business models. And so, for me, AI, it's a great example in EDF, as you said. If we think about more people owning electric vehicles, they might use them as a way to power their own homes. But if you had a way of understanding demand, if you could use AI as a way to understand demand, then there might be a business in enabling small communities to share power between them, right? Now, it could be done, but the question is, what's the business model that sits behind it that makes it worth doing? And, do people actually want it? And in what form do they want it? So, to your question about how do you enable small businesses to thrive, I mean, that is what startups are so good at, is figuring out the right business model for this particular customer need and this particular technology. They are so much better because they're so much quicker at cycling through, is this the pain point that I'm solving, and is this the right technology to solve the pain point, and is there a market inside that? So I think at two levels. The one is make it easier for startups to thrive and to drive that learning. And then make it easier to bridge that learning out into the broader community, whether it's through, enterprise, big businesses, or through, sharing of knowledge. But ultimately, it's that speed of learning that startups can bring that is going to really drive the progress, I think.
Maybe picking up on that, in Finland we have something called Smart Otaniemi, which is a small locality which is close to the city of Helsinki, where Business Finland has put up a community together with VTT and a bunch of others, where SMEs are free to come and go and to innovate with the top people of the energy cluster from different levels and leverage the entire community. So the data from the buildings on the entire campus is given at no charge to the SMEs to be innovated on. And also facilities are available, and then you have also the university and the research institution capabilities there. Obviously things cost money, but SMEs need to think about tomorrow rather than 5 years. So they need to have access now, they need to have capability now. By having this platform and having this interaction capability, they can sort of go the first steps and do the fail fasts, and then find the embryos which are good for the kind of cluster programs like the Eurostars and these things, which actually then scale them up that we've been talking about earlier today.
So that sounds great. I'd like one of those, I think. That sounds like a great initiative. I want to understand more about that. Xavier, quick question to you then. So you're a large corporate. Do you work with SMEs in this space? And how do you drag them to market? And how does that all work from your perspective? So if you're an SME out there in the audience, you've got a great idea, how do they engage with you to get it to market?
So I think that there are different ways. First is we acknowledge that it's really important to work in partnership. We don't have all the answers, and we don't have the ability to get all those answers. So I think we are very pleased to engage with a number of other companies, SMEs, startups, or any other groups that have interesting solutions. But of course, we need to manage that. So I think probably the first thing, if I recall, is to bring that culture change within the company to make sure that this integration process and that collaboration is happening. And that's something that we have started probably 3 or 4 years ago within EDF Energy, and that is now taking place. So I think it's really different depending on where you're looking at within the company. So on the customer side of the business, I mean, of course, it's very fast-paced, and the value of time is far limited. So we need to find a way to really have a quick engagement and to be able to work very, very quickly with startups, for instance. So we have set up an innovation accelerator that is called Blue Lab within our customer business. And basically that's there to mix actually people coming from startup, people from within the business with different expertise, and to work together on a project. So usually to kick off the process, we start by just a question, an issue that we have, and to voice that out to the community, leveraging, of course, some of the vehicles such as Innovate UK. We had great collaboration in order to put that in place. And then after that, once we have what we think good opportunities, is to actually work together, not just say, oh, well, very interesting, we're going to take that out and see what we can do with it. No, actually, you come to work with us. We spend 3 months working together, understanding better your solution, and see how we can turn that out into value proposition. And we've been successful doing that in one offer that's out on the market, focused on elderly people, in order to help detect if there are some changes in their day-to-day pattern, and to be able to alert their children or parents. So that's one good example, but it doesn't just apply to our customer business. I think we can do that in each and every part of the business. And the other very good thing that we've been doing is on the nuclear side. Basically, we have a big challenge in front of us, probably not tomorrow, but that's coming up, which will be the decommissioning and the dismantling of our existing power station. And we need to start and prepare that today. And we have started to engage with startups that have actually very good product and offers in order to prepare us to understand how we're going to do that and operate that. And we have a very successful collaboration also on that aspect. So.
And I just want to pick up a question on Slido here that is asking which types of companies are going to move the fastest, are going to enable this transition the most. And I'm wondering, when you go back to base, does it feel like EDF are moving like a freight train to embrace this transition, or does it feel slow and lumbering? And perhaps, Tom, do you think SMEs are going to be the absolute key to this? So Xavier first.
Well, I think it's, I don't know if there is one straight answer. I think we, as a big company, we are relying on a number of assets and big investments. So I think on that side of the business, we need a little bit of clarity and certainty on where we are going. And sometimes it can prove to be a bit slow in terms of how we are operating. But that's just one side of it, because other parts of the company and the other part of the company, we also need to have far more pace and to be able to react far more quickly. And so I think it's a bit of a mix. What we are sort of trying to do is to reconcile that and to acknowledge that, of course, the transition we are contemplating will require change. But I mean, building an offshore wind farm will take 2 years, 3 years, and you can try to shorten that out, but it will still take some time. Whereas putting an offer for our customer on the market can be as quick as a month, maybe. So I think it's reconciling those different paces and just make sure that we are sort of making the best of what we can do in order to be as quick as we can.
Okay, so you're not holding it back. Tom,
Yeah.
can we move even faster?
So I think obviously your small your startups and your small businesses are able to move faster because they are just by their very nature they're a lot more nimble. So they can move faster, but obviously they then you hit problems of scale. So I think from what we see in terms of businesses that we work with, the ones that are able to move fast and the ones that are able to survive that kind of 15-year death cycle or however long it is are two things. The one is they've got a really strong sense of purpose. And I think when you look at clean growth, it is the businesses that can articulate what they are trying to do in the world beyond what they currently do today. So I mean, if we go back to IKEA, their purpose, creating a better everyday life for the many people, right? Beautifully Swedish, but also, applies to the current business, but also equally kind of shines a light to where they want to go. And I think that's great. The second part of it is you need the culture that enables you to do that, right? So you have to have the culture and the systems within the business to say, we will be able to reinvent ourselves every 15 years in the way that, you know, Amazon have done, moving from being a bookseller to being a provider of web services. You know, if you look at where their retail comes from. So it's purpose and culture, and those, you know, it's said a lot, but it really, you can see the evidence out there.
Very good. So we're almost out of time. There's two things I want to do. I want to pick off one question on Slido and then finish on a more general question. So the Slido question, and a few people have voted for it, saying, is blockchain the answer to data security? Is it going to really help us share data more broadly? So is blockchain the answer? And perhaps yes, no, you know.
Well, it's a very good tool that can be used for very many different purposes, but it is not a business model. So it means that it's something we can use in different kinds of environments, but it is a complement to what we have, and it will not be a solve-all, and it does not by itself provide us with any more security than any other technology. So we need to think about security, we need to think about business model, and then we might opt for blockchain in some solutions, and then in some we don't need it.
Okay, very good. And I guess just to finish up, we've talked sort of a lot, I suppose, about our experiences, maybe based around the UK here. There's a global collaboration piece here, isn't there? And perhaps I wondered if you could very quickly just go down the line and share your thoughts around where do you see the biggest global collaboration opportunity in this low-carbon transition? So perhaps I can start with you, Tom.
I mean, briefly for me, I think it's looking at countries that are facing the challenges, that are closest to facing the challenges that we'll all face, and look at the innovations that are starting to land there and leapfrog them back, whether it's, you know, mobile in Kenya with M-Pesa, or, you know, I have family in Cape Town. The innovations happening around water conservation and water usage there are pretty amazing.
Very good. Ruth?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to it. One side is there's many countries in the Far East, etc., that are, you know, building cities from the start. So can we look at what they're doing, and is there a way to adopt, to trial new technologies out there and then adopt them over here? But on the same side of that is that you have existing cities and buildings that are very difficult to manage. So we need to start looking at similarities. Historic European cities all face the same challenges. So we should be working together to solve those challenges together. And I think regulation has a big part to play in that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there are very different starting points, as you have mentioned. So I think we probably need to leverage as much as we can those different situations. So I think definitely Asia, there are a lot of opportunity. The challenge is massive. Africa, we discussed that as well. I think completely different starting point and completely different solutions that could be brought that in. And then European and Western countries that are in the same situation as well. So I think it could come from very different ways. I think the main point is how do we find a way to capture the interesting solutions or business model, and then what's our capability to transfer that in other contexts where it makes more sense. And I think that's probably an area where we can accelerate that. Yeah.
Well, I think that we face different challenges in different regions because of different history, different infrastructure. In the Western world, we need to share infrastructure. In the developing world, we need to embrace new technology and basically go fast forward. But there are two issues that are at the core of all of this, and I think they are access to data, access to market, because those will raise the questions that need to be handled in each context to allow for the change to actually happen.
Thank you, and what a great note to end on. So, panel, loads there to mull over. I hope you've enjoyed that discussion. What we'd like to do now is invite a case study onto the stage. So I'd like to invite David Latimer from Magnamatics. Magnamatics have been one of the EUREKA Catapult's game-changer companies, so we believe in this technology. We're really excited to have it here. It's also one of the EUREKA case studies for this show. So perhaps you can put your hands together both to thank our panel, but also to welcome David Latimer to the stage.
So first of all, thanks, Steve, for the introduction, and also, of course, to EUREKA for the opportunity to present to you today. So I'm here to talk about a project which we completed recently, which is all about a marine current turbine. But first of all, I'd just like to tell you a little bit more about Magnamatics. So Magnamatics, we spun out of Sheffield University in 2006. So we haven't quite made the 15 years yet, but we're on our way. And fundamentally what we do is we use magnets to make gears. So why on earth would you do that? Well, the reason is probably three reasons. They're very, very efficient, so we can make very efficient gears. They're very reliable, they don't wear out, there's no touching parts. And also they tend to be very compact. So we're active in several sectors, offshore renewable wind, hybrid cars, but today I'm here to talk about this marine current project, which was conducted with a company called Seaplace in Spain. So basically, what we were trying to achieve is a very, very simple device, as few moving parts as possible. We wanted it to be able to be deployed in different territories, so deep water conditions, shallow water conditions. Not too expensive in terms of installation, so it's a very, very simple device. You literally have one anchor and one tether. There's no kind of very expensive underwater construction that has to be done. It can also be put in place in very concentrated patterns, so it gives us very high power density. So a little bit more about the technology. So really this brings together sort of two fundamental technologies. So what you see there on the right is a full-scale model of a turbine. So that's a pretty big device. It's self-steering, so basically the donut or the duct around the outside of the turbine, that's filled with air to give the system buoyancy, but it also controls the flow through the turbine. And then in the middle is the magnetics technology, which is this magnetically geared direct drive generator. As I said before, the advantages of that are it's very efficient, it's compact, and it's very reliable. So the combination of that reliability and this sort of self-yawing system on the turbine really means that we're going for something that will last the sort of times that we expect these products to be in service for, which is 25 to 30 years. So that was our kind of ambition. Maybe I'd just now like to share a little bit of a video with you, if that's possible. So I'll just talk through this as we go, so if you could run that. So we employed quite a lot of different technologies in doing this. So there was a lot of 3D printing, new techniques in terms of manufacturing. So this is the installation of the generator into the prototype turbine in Spain. It all looks quite sort of basic, but it's quite interesting to understand that this is the first time that anybody has actually constructed a device like this. Also, what you probably don't understand is that there's at least 3 PhDs in that video. So the guys who actually did some of the fundamental design of this technology are involved in the execution of this. And that's actually very important for a company like us, because we're giving people the experience from sitting in front of 3D computers and designing this stuff to actually seeing it turn into reality. And the engagement that you get from your employees by doing that is absolutely unbelievable. So there's the device. It's there in Spain, about to go into its first trials. And there it is running for the first time. And the two, certainly our guys from the magnetics team who were out with Spain, were sending us texts and Facebook messages all the way through this. The excitement was palpable, really fantastic. So that's the very first running of the machine. And in a moment, you'll see where we actually tried to test it. So this is looking to see, will it actually yaw on its own into the current and start generating electricity. So there you go, the flow starts, the generator turns into the current, and away it goes. Clean, green electricity, fantastic. So that's kind of what we always hope to achieve. And hopefully that's been a useful, quick introduction to the product, or the project. So what are the challenges to come? I've listened to the panel, and it's all very nice to do these projects where you're doing clean, green things, but fundamentally, you're going to have to make some money out of this. So the challenge for us, as ever, is driving down the cost of the electricity. We're actually involved in wind as well, and what, as Steve's already explained, is the cost of energy in wind is coming down very dramatically, and for us, we now need to attack that as well with this product. So the next phases for us is we're actually looking to deploy the prototype we made in a river to do an actual real-world test of the technology, and then go on to build a full-size demonstrator. So just to close out, I think it's also important just to talk about some of the other benefits that you get from these projects. So as well as actually looking at our technology in this market, through doing this project, we've improved our technical methods. We've managed to do things like running the device without any sensors, which means we can save cost. We've certainly strengthened our intellectual property and filed a couple more patents. And, and finally, we've actually been, because we've been working in this kind of marine environment, we've actually managed to secure some other commercial contracts in sort of parallel markets. So hopefully that's been interesting for you. A very quick introduction to this project. As I say, my name's Dave Latimer. I'm around for the rest of the day if people would like to come and see me afterwards. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, well, David, thank you very much for that. Fascinating. Certainly the first time I've seen that tidal device, and yeah, I mean, look forward to seeing how that progresses on its journey. It's great. So that brings us to a close, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your attention and your questions on Slido. We're going to leave you now, so can I just ask you to thank our panel once again and enjoy the rest of your conference?